Hey everyone, Urban Fish Keeper here, and today I want to take you through betta breeding, and this is how I breed bettas. There are lots of methods out there on breeding bettas, and if you have a method that works for you, keep going with it. The method that I use is based on, I'm not a commercial breeder. I'm breeding for the fun. I'm breeding for myself. The other thing is I want to try and give the fry the best possible chance to grow up and become adult bettas. So I'm just going to run you through my method. You know what, if there's some things in here that you think are great and will work for you, use it. If there's things that you see that I explain or go through and you think, nah, that's a load of rubbish, you know what, just leave it out. This is what works for me. This is how I go through the process. So let me explain to you how I go through it. First of all, before you start, you obviously need a betta pair. Now, the way that I do it is I buy multiple bettas and I keep them in my betta rack, and I'll show you some footage of that now quickly where I keep them. So let me just go through and just show you some of my breeding pairs. Most of you would have seen my video on the betta rack, and this is where I keep all my bettas that I want to breed. Now, what I'm doing is I'm prepping them in these containers or getting them ready for breeding, and then I make the decision on which ones I want to use for the breeding. Unfortunately, the light's not that good in the top one because there is no light, so sorry for the reflection. Try and get something here. Okay, so you've now seen them in the betta rack. What I then do is I work on a 2-week process or 2-week preparation process. That means both adults and setup. For the adults, for me, it's important to feed them, get the right proteins in them and get them ready for breeding. You know, you want the female to show the little white egg spot underneath should be showing prominent. The fins are all looking good, body mass is looking good, the fish just look in good condition and look like they're ready to breed. What I do during that 2-week period is I normally feed frozen foods, and it will be a combination of bloodworm and frozen brine shrimp and live brine shrimp. Because I'm hatching out live brine shrimp to feed some of my fry, I give them some live brine shrimp as well, but that's not a requirement. When it comes to bettas, the one thing I will say, whether it be adults or whether it be fry or whether it be juveniles, it doesn't really matter. Bettas will eat as much food as you give them, is what I found. So I think the one mistake that a lot of people make with bettas is that they overfeed. Now, for my adults, I feed them when I'm getting them ready twice a day. Otherwise, they get fed. The adults get fed once a day. When I say getting ready, if I'm feeding bloodworm, frozen bloodworm, I may be giving 3 to 5 bloodworm per feed per fish. That is it. Okay, depending if it's big bloodworm in the frozen little block, I'll give 3. If it's smaller ones, I might give 5, and that's it. They don't get anything more than that. So the first thing I do is about 2 weeks out from breeding, I start prepping the females, and that the pair. And that continues for that 2-week period. Excuse me. Now, at the same time, I breed bettas using two methods. Either a 20-litre glass aquarium, which is, as you all will know by now, my Kmart 20-litre, or I use these plastic tubs. Now, these plastic tubs come from IKEA. They're probably no more than, maybe 8 to 10 probably 10 centimeters high. Both, whether I'm using the aquarium or the plastic tub, I make sure they both have covers. And that's to try and ensure that the temperature of the air between the water, or the air above the water is the same, or more or less the same temperature as the water. Because they breathe from the air, especially when they're tiny, fry, you don't want them taking gulps of cold air. It's not good for them at all. So on the plastic container, I cover my plastic containers with a piece of acrylic, and that works for me there. And on the 20 liters, I use the cover that comes with it. And depending on the temperature in my room, because it's reasonably warm in here, I might cover the little center hole with a piece of cling film. All right, at the same time, what I'm making sure is when I'm getting everything ready to breed, is I'm making sure that I've got live food ready to go. Now, I have noticed on quite a few of the forums where people have put pairs together and they've now bred, and the first thing they go is, oh, what do I need to feed my bedders? Well, if you've got to that point, then you've gone about it the wrong way. You really should have all of that prepped and ready to go. So when the little ones arrive, when the fry is there and they're free swimming, you can provide them the required food. Now, this is quite a controversial one again, where a lot of people feel that, oh, you can just start giving them brine shrimp from the word go. And maybe you can, but that's not my opinion. And I don't subscribe to that. I don't think that's the right way to go. And sure, you may have success, but I think you need to give them the best possible chance. So, when it comes to the food preparation, and some of it you have to do well before 2 weeks, but when it comes to the food preparation, for me, it's infusoria first, then you go to a vinegar eel, then to microworm and brine shrimp. And then from there, it's just brine shrimp right through. Now, every breeder has an Achilles heel. So what I mean by that is every breeder that tries to breed something has something that just they can't get right or never works for them. Now that might be, you can't breed a particular fish, or you can't get something to spawn or whatever. It's one of those things, it just doesn't work for you. And maybe years later it does, but when you're trying it, it just doesn't work. For me, my Achilles heel right now is infusoria. For every 10 batches I make, I get one that works. And it's the bane of my life. I really struggle with infusoria, and I'm trying a whole lot of different techniques because I really need to try and get it right. So if any of you out there have a foolproof infusoria culture method, please post it in the comments below. I'd love to read it and give it a try. Anyway, get back to the food. So in preparation for your breeding, you want to make sure you've got an infusoria culture up and running, and it will be ready in 2 weeks' time, ready to go. Then you want to have your vinegar eel culture up and running, and this is the vinegar eel culture that I use for feeding. I've got 3 of them, 3 cultures running. This is the one I'm feeding. Put cotton wool in the top, fresh water above it, and then I can siphon out. And I'll do a little video on how I use vinegar eels. So vinegar eel culture, and then the one that I always have available in my fish room, whether I need it or not, it's always running, is good old microworms. And then make sure that you've got brine shrimp eggs ready to go, ready to hatch out for your babies. All right, so that's the food. That's what, in my opinion, you need to have ready for when you breed. Now, when it comes to the setup, and again, I've seen a fair amount of this on the internet of late, and people breeding. And I'm not saying the way people do it is wrong. I'm just saying, to me, it just doesn't seem logical, and it doesn't seem the right way of doing it. But that doesn't make it wrong. It's just not my way of doing it. And really, again, this is how I do it. Other people do it other ways, and good on them. They can, if it works for them, go with it. For me, it's important that my tanks are prepped at least 2 weeks before the time. Now, when it comes to these trays, these like I've got here, I've got 4 of those running at any time, ready to go. Now, I've got to the point now where I'm not going to be breeding any Bettas probably for a while now, because I've got enough. I've bred them, they're doing well. And as per, as I've said before, for this channel, it's about trying new things and trying different things. So we'll probably put the Bettas on hold now for a while. When it comes to, and both of the setups internally are the same on these 2, with the exception of this one, I have a little sponge filter in it. This one, I have no filter in it. All right, so what I do is I make sure that I've got almond leaves in it, both. I have some Java moss, both, and I have some floating plant, both. It's important for me is that the water has tannins in, and I get those tannins from the Indian almond leaves. And I leave this under lighting for at a minimum 2 weeks. In my case, it just continuously stands under lighting and it is ready to accept fish when I want to breed. In the glass aquarium, I have a little sponge filter in as well, as you can see at the back. And that sponge filter is just bubbling away softly in preparation for when I add the adults. So that's how I set it up. And the reason I do it so well in advance is I believe that by putting the plants and everything else in here, you will start getting a fair amount of little infusoria and little bugs and things developing in these tanks. So because there's no fish or anything in here, the numbers will increase. So when the eggs hatch and you've got little tiny fry, there will already be some infusoria in this tank to help them along over those first couple of days. Betta fry are absolutely minute. Well, look, I wear glasses, but they are really tiny. And the other thing is, what I've realized is that, and I've had this happen a couple of times, and I'll show you in a second some of the ones that I've gotten at different stages, is I've had it happen where they spawn, I look in the container, especially these ones, and I maybe see one. Now, a lot of people go, one fry, it's not worth my time. What I do is I treat that one the same as what I would treat 50. And 2 weeks in, I'm surprised to go, and look, and then all of a sudden I can see 20 little ones swimming around. So they're really tiny. I really struggle to see them. But if I see one, in my opinion, there's fry in there, and I treat it the same as what I would treat 50 fry. So sorry for a reflection, guys. I'm just trying to show you what the bettas look like after about a week. These ones are just over a week. And, as I've said before, they are incredibly tiny. So these are about a week, and in this tank or this aquarium, I've got probably, I don't know, maybe 50, maybe more, maybe 100 babies in there. All right, you can also see what the setup is in there. Okay. These guys that are in here, they're about, probably going on to 3 weeks now. So they're still quite tiny, but taking brine shrimp now happily. And you can see this is what the tub looks like on the inside. Okay, and these guys here, they're around about 4 weeks, and they're really growing quickly now. Now this is an interesting one, because when they'd spawned, I only saw one baby in here, and that was it for weeks. Well, not for weeks, but for a fair period of time, I only saw one. And, went through the normal process, the infusoria, etc. And then there's probably about 20 of them in here now. All right, so that's the setup. That's how I run it, and that's how it looks. Get it well set up well in advance. Now, when it comes to adding the Betta, what I do is, and again, either system, whether it's these ones or these ones, what I do is the male that's ready, I put the male in the morning. So I get up, I come in, I feed everybody, including the Bettas. Once he's eaten, and I'm happy he's eaten, I put the male in. I then leave the male in for probably an hour. Sometimes it's less, sometimes a little bit more. I'll leave the male swimming in the aquarium or the plastic tub for about an hour. After that, I use just a little cup like this, and it's really tiny. If you look at it in relation to the height next to the tank. I take a little cup like this, fill it up with some water from where the female is, pop her in here, and this then floats in either the glass aquarium or in the plastic tub. I will leave the female floating in there for probably a few hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours I'd start in the morning. So by lunchtime, I will pop, no, I won't pop the female out at that stage. What I do is I wait and see how the male reacts. If the male starts to build a nest, and it's a fair sized bubble nest, the female's ready to be popped out in the afternoon. If it gets well after lunchtime, I normally won't let the female out and I'll wait till the next morning. I do though wait for the male to create his bubble nest. If there's no bubble nest by the male, I do one of two things. I either stop that attempt at breeding those two, separate them and put them back on the Betta rack, or I swap the female out and see whether that makes a difference to the male, and sometimes it does. Once I see that there is a nest, I then add the female in. There will be some chasing, and if the female is interested, which I've seen quite a few times, the female will also do a little bit of display, and then she'll go and join the male under the nest, and the courtship process starts, and then they start spawning. Now, the eggs are tiny, and I'll be honest, I can't see the eggs in a bubble nest. I've even tried using a magnifying glass and it just doesn't work for me. So the cues that I use that tell me that the male and the female have successfully spawned, irrelevant of what I'm using, because this one, the plastic tub, is even more difficult to see anything, is one is I notice that the male is sitting underneath the bubble nest continuously, and is not moving out from that area. The other thing is the female is also hiding away in probably the furthest corner. That to me is an indication that they're done and dusted. The other thing I do is I check up, and if the male is still aggressively chasing the female, you know, if I've put it in the following morning and he's still aggressively chasing her, you know, by that evening, and her fins are starting to look a bit tattered, I a lot of the time will pull the female and not allow it to be beat up anymore. I'll put it back in the Betta rack. I might try another female, or I'll leave it for another 2 weeks or so and try her again. But again, if the male is under the nest, he seems occupied under his bubble nest, he's not chasing the female, he's not going out towards her, she's sitting in the far corner, I pull her out and we're ready to go. So she's out. Approximately 3 days later, you'll start seeing little black dots appear on the side, a little fry maybe shooting across. What I do is after about 3 days, I take my finger and put it on top of the bubble nest. If the bubble nest is under an almond leaf, or if it's under a piece of plastic or under a piece of polystyrene, I just move that around gently in the water, and from that I can normally see 1 or 2 little babies dart out, and I know that's done. At that stage, I remove the male, and the male goes back to the Betta rack. I then start the process of feeding the fry. As soon as I can see them darting around, they're now free swimming, and I'm ready to feed them. What do I use for my males to spawn under? Let me just show you what I use there. Okay, so when it comes to an area for the male to make the nest, what I do is I either use some bubble wrap and with the bubble down, so he can blow his bubbles in between the little gaps. So either bubble wrap, a new almond leaf floating on the top in the corner. And what I like to do is I like to put that almond leaf with the floating plants, because when you put them into, even if you put them into the glass one, at that stage, once you introduce the male, you switch off the filter, the little sponge filter, so there's no bubbling, the surface is very still. And also, you know, you can see here, I drop the water down to at least half. And in this one, it's reasonably shallow. Now in the wild, you know, although bettas might be in massive ponds, when they're breeding in the very shallow sections up against the shore. They're not breeding in deep water, so they don't like the deep water. And the reason I like to have it shallow as well is the eggs that drop down, the little babies that fall out of the bubble nest, it's less work for the male to grab them and push them back in. He doesn't have to swim as far down to get it. Anyway, so either the bubble wrap, an almond leaf, and if I use an almond leaf, I put it on top of the floating plants, or I use just a small piece of polystyrene and let the male make his nest under that. All right, so once the little ones, the fry, are now free swimming, for the first probably 3 days after that, I am giving infusoria as many times a day. If I'm at the office, then I can't, but if I'm at home, I try and give infusoria as many times a day as I can, and I just use a pipette. You know, I fill the pipette twice, and I just put a couple of drops of that in with the fry. The fry will also be picking up little things off the plants and stuff that are inside these, you know, either inside the tub or inside the aquarium. So that's probably for the first 3 days or so. When I get to, so they've been free swimming for 3 days. When I get to about day 4, I'll still, you know, give infusoria, and I will also give vinegar eel with the infusoria over those couple of days, but very little vinegar eel. Now, vinegar eel will at least remain alive in the aquarium for some time, but I add that. And then, you know, so free swimming on day 3, infusoria, fair amount, well, 2 full pipettes, and then I might give, you know, 1 squirt of vinegar eel at the same time in there. If they want to try and pick on that, they can. Once I get to about a week of using the vinegar eel and infusoria, I then start offering newly hatched brine shrimp, live brine shrimp, as well as a little bit of micro worm. And when they get to about, you know, once they get to, you know, 3 weeks or so, depending on the size, that's it. It's just brine shrimp from there, probably from 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks on, it's just brine shrimp. All right, so that's really how I breed them. That's what I do. When it comes to growing, and this is an interesting one, I'll show you some footage now of 2 20s, 20-litre tanks that I've got 2 batches in. So I find that you can actually keep a fair amount of them in a smallish tank without any aggressive behavior, without any problems. I haven't got to the point yet where I've needed to move them to a much bigger tank, and I'm sure that you know, I have no doubt that that will happen. And I haven't got the stage yet where I need to separate. But once you get past that initial phase of, you know, from the fry, free swimming, getting them eating, get past that first week or 2. You know, then it's really easy sailing from there, and it's not a challenge at all. All right, I think that's probably it. If you have any questions, please post it in the comments, and I'll try and answer it. Again, this is my method and what I do. It doesn't make it the right method, the best method. It's just my method. I hope you found something useful in this. Give it a try. You know, try and breed some Bettas. It's really good fun. They're awesome little fish to breed. I really enjoy breeding them. So to all of you, have fun, stay safe, and till the next video, see you all. Bye.